begin. So thank you so much, Grace, for agreeing to do this interview. You've just been invited or selected to be one of the the first fellowship the first fellow for the fellowship, and so for Eudemonia's yes organization. And before we get into the details of the fellowship, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in architecture and your family history? And yeah.
Well, that's a very, very long answer.
Question, yes.
Yeah, it's a very long one. Thank you for having me always. So you know that in Venezuela, I am from Venezuela, so in Venezuela, we always joke about it. We always say that we are like the mixed breed of the world.
Huh.
We actually have a term for that, is cacri. It's just like, when you find these street dogs that are so mixed up that you cannot tell them. That's what Venezuelans are for the world, like just the of the world. So Venezuela is a country that received immigrants from its very early history, and the difference of other countries in which that receive this kind of immigration, and then these groups were secluded, just the black with the black, the Chinese with the Chinese. In Venezuela, that didn't happen, and everyone mixed, and that's how, like, you cannot tell, for example, the color of the skin of a Venezuelan. If you see me, I am completely white, and you will find the whitest until the darkest, and we are all Venezuelans. My particular case, I come from Spanish on my mom's side. It's a Spanish family. My mom's family immigrated in Venezuela in the 60s after the World War and the Civil War. I am not really sure, like, my grandpa, where it comes. I know that there's something that is not purely white because my mom is way darker than me. So that's how I know that on that side, it's not purely white or purely European. My grandma was from Asturias, Spain. And in theory, my grandpa was from Madrid. But as I tell you, that's probably not how it goes in real life. My dad, on the other hand, is descendant from Italian people, but he's like third generation Venezuelan. So he's also part of the mixed breed that happens. So yeah, like if you ask me how I identify myself, I identify as Venezuelan, which means that I have been mixed I'm all over again. So that's who I am, and I take pride on it. I really enjoy on thinking that that's my ancestry and how I can relate to other cultures through this. So yeah, I am a very white person that dances salsa like nobody else. So something that kind of cultural mix, I find them super rich and
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's such a I love the way that you described it, the cultural mix and coming from so many different places, but still feeling very rooted to your
100%.
and the country. Yeah.
Because the question is, to what are you rooted, right? It's just if the country is the land, is the borders, is what is a country, right? So for me, it's that culture. It's just like having a Chinese breakfast and then going dancing Cuban salsa, and at the end you will have an hallaca for Christmas, which is a
hallaca. What's that?
Hallaca is just like the Venezuelan typical Christmas dish that comes from the time of colonization. So all of these things are so rooted in our culture that it's just rich. That's the question. That's the word. It's just rich. So an hallaca was the typical Christmas dish that developed in the colonial times when the Spanish colonizers give the leftovers to the slaves, which were essentially First Nations and the Black people that they were brought from Africa. So as these guys were being given food that they didn't understand because it didn't belong to their culture, like olives, peppers, raisins, that had never seen in America at that point.
Mm,
So they decided to do something with it that makes sense for them. So they created this kind of corn tamal in which they will mix all of these fillings and
mm,
fill it with it. So I mean, it's one of the best dishes of Venezuelan culture, and it comes from that time. So
mm.
I mean, it's a great dish, and it's culturally very interesting.
Do you make that sometimes when you're?
This year I got stranded here in Vancouver and I couldn't see my family.
Mhm.
But the other beauty about hallacas is that it is not about the dish itself, but how you make it.
Oh,
It
okay.
has to be made in family, and it takes like 2 days to make. It's horrible to make. It takes forever.
Huh.
It's very hard labor,
Mm,
but it's a process. You know, the families all get together, make
mhm.
200 of them, like put like Christmas music. We have our own Christmas music. We don't do the um,
Uh,
it's like let it snow thing. We don't do that.
yeah. No, you don't do
Have
that.
our own. Um, and then everyone like share a table and
Mm,
everyone like together. This year I got stranded and I got very frustrated. So for the first time in my life, I made my own
oh, okay. By
and
yourself?
by
Yeah.
myself.
Did you FaceTime your mom or something?
No, yeah, I have my mom there, like tell me what to do because I have no idea. This is something that passes from generation to generation. There's no better way of doing
Yeah.
it. It's like you have to see it over and over again to see how it is done. There's no other way.
Mm,
So don't even try to follow a recipe because that's like the recipe for disaster.
mm,
So yeah, I have my mom there and I made my own, and they were actually pretty good, which surprised me. I was not
hmm.
expecting it. So
Well, maybe you'll have to create your own tradition with friends next year or something where,
yeah,
yeah, when post COVID. But that sounds like, yeah, recreating tradition is, um, it's part of culture. That's how culture grows and changes. I think it's like,
absolutely.
um, yeah. Well, thank you so much for describing such a rich, um, history and story with for the first question. So I guess now moving on to the question of why are you interested in Eudaimonia Network and what we have been doing after hearing your background and your experience. What about Eudaimonia, I guess, do you find that you're connected to or that you're, yeah, that you find
Sure.
similar?
So when I came to Canada at first, I didn't know about the situation of First Nations in here. In my country, the situation like the way we see First Nations is different. Um, so when I came here and I found like this situation and this conflict, it literally it just caught my mind. It's just something that sparked curiosity to say, why is this happening? Where did this come from?
Mm,
And and definitely through my years in the master, um, I find it like very interesting and something that not only interesting but necessary. It's just we need to start recognizing that the world is not white. It's not only one color, whatever it is, and that there's a strength in combining our like our capacities. You know,
mhm,
like would we be in this situation with climate change if we have listened to First Nations in the first place?
mm,
You know, so it's just like it is about listening and understanding that everyone has a point, and also from a very maybe selfish point of view, I am an immigrant, you know, and I was pretty much kicked out of my own country. I had to
oh,
leave my land, the place
huh,
where I belong, where I make my hallacas, where I dance my salsa, where my humor is understood. I had to leave that. So
mm,
in some ways, I see what happened with First Nations as something I can
mm,
relate to, and also the hope they have on taking back the power on their land and taking the place that they legally deserve.
mhm,
It's also my hope for my own people. You know, it's just like if they succeed, maybe there's hope for Venezuelans, Syrians. You
mm,
know, so
mm,
it is not only the thing with indigenous community, how that situation repeats throughout the world, and what does it mean for a community like this that can be small, can be maybe decimated, and they are still there and have hope, and they are doing this amazing work for their own. So yeah, I think that my main interest is that by working with indigenous communities, I keep awake, like I keep alive that hope that things can be better, and we don't have to live in a country that we despise, or not in a country but in a world that is just bad news after bad news after bad news. Something good needs to happen from time to time.
Yeah.
It's up to our generation to change that. So
yeah, no, thank you. That touched me when you talked about the relationship of what happened to indigenous to other places in the world and your own experience of being displaced from your own country. So yeah, and the resiliency, I think that's a really important word to keep in mind, that the First Nations have shown, and that's a lot of other cultures have shown too, even after being colonized. Like, not only Canada was colonized, so just recognizing that the indigenous story is not the only story, but it's reflected in so many other cultures. I think that's really poignant, what you pointed out. And so the next question is, how has working for Eudaimonia in the context that you have changed your perception of design and your place in the world? I know you'll be starting the fellowship and you'll be coming to Haida Gwaii soon, but I guess you've been observing and researching from afar. So
I mean, more than working for Eudaimonia, which we have what I think is very cool material for Haida Gwaii, and I mean Haida Gwaii, I have never been there, but through you and through the class we had, I find it like such an interesting, magical place on earth that is just so unique. And we really need to find ways of keeping that way, that magical, that fantastic. Like, there has to be some light in this world. So by working with Eudaimonia, I keep that contact with the things that I believe in, because as landscape architects, sometimes we do a lot of developer work and things that are good for business, and that's fine. But there also has to be that thing that keeps the spark going. Like, why am I here? Like, why am I a landscape architect? And through my own work in the communities in Venezuela, that I have a sensibility towards helping community. And I believe that the built environment is a huge part of building communities and the health of those communities. So, I mean, what's the difference in working in underprivileged communities in Venezuela than working with communities with troubles in Canada? It's just none. It's a border. It's a line that is imaginary that somebody put there. Nobody understands why. It makes no sense. So for me, it just keeps going on my own work. It's just putting my capacities to the help of people that can use them and use them for good,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that gives me peace. And that, I don't know, in some ways that's what inspires me, because otherwise, I don't know, I could be a lawyer,
Yeah, you would be a good lawyer.
They say that, yeah.
Yes, you have that very passionate and very convincing tone, so you would be a good lawyer. But I think your skill set is so much more valued in the context of design and landscape architecture, especially because I personally find that landscape architects don't speak out as much as they should, and we need more role models.
I am for sure the number one guilty of that. I never talk, and I never take it out. That one is probably one of my weaknesses.
Well, this is your opportunity. You can share whatever you want with the world on Eudaimonia's first newsletter / okay, so let's see, what's the next question? Oh yeah, so I think this is a nice follow-up question. So how does it feel to be chosen for this fellowship?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
For once, after working so much in higher work, I'm gonna go to higher work.
Yeah, you did so much.
And meet the community finally after the COVID thing. It's just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I really cannot wait to participate and be there, meet the people like in person. I want to meet people in person. I want to hug people, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping for. It's just like,
Yeah. Can you
seeing
talk a little
all
bit
this
about
work.
your can you talk a little bit about your work in the studio, just like a couple of sentences about that and how that virtual experience was, and then in relation to the excitement you have to be coming here soon. Yeah.
I mean, the studio was awesome, but I always told you, it's just like I am lacking that being there, like
Mhm.
like feeling the land. And I know that this can sound like hippie stuff, but it just, yeah, no, but it is not the same to see through Google Maps than being there, understanding
Mhm.
the place. What's the unique lucky of that? You know, like, how does it feel to you, and what
Mhm.
it of the place? So I'm finally gonna get that, you know,
Mhm.
after like all the history and all the facts that I went through and all the questioning, because I don't know if you remember that I was always like fighting, like, where's my place in
Yeah. I remember you were struggling about
conflict?
where, yeah.
Or,
During the course, you had some questions regarding how, like, as an outsider, how do you situate yourself in all of this history and all of this?
exactly that, and that for me is still something that I think on, and it's just like, where's my place? And probably that question will never be answered. It's something, it's like a working process that your place changes as you work on it.
Mhm.
But yeah, definitely it's awesome to be able to go there and meet the people that I met through the computer, and finally like be humans again, because this
Mhm.
just taking our humanity out. So just
Yeah.
human, share a table, you know, just the basics.
Yeah. Beautiful. So next question. What do you want people to know you for? When you meet the
Wow.
people, when you meet the locals here, or just in general, what do you want people to know you for? And this is also related to the next question, is what are your passions and interests? So I can put two questions in one, maybe.
Okay. So here's the thing. I try to keep my expectations of what people think of me to the minimum,
Hmm.
because if I have learned something in this world, it's just like the only things I can control is the things that I think and
Mm.
that I do, not the things that people think
Mm.
or see about me. So you know what? My only take is just like is going there in all humility, put my work to their service, and from there it is up to them to tell how they see, you know,
Mm.
and if they find me useful, or maybe they just want me out of the island as soon as I land. But that's up to
Yeah.
them, you know,
Yeah.
and it is not to me to say
Mm.
like how will they perceive me, in like thinking as an 80-year-old who looks at his life back, you know. It's just like I would like to be known by my work, you know,
Mhm.
and the good things I can do in this world. It's just plain that, like,
Mm.
I can live better than I found here.
Mm.
That's that's it then. And I think that that if all of us do our best every time we can, I mean, this world will be different sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
So passions and interests, I have too many. So definitely, it's just like by growing in a place like Venezuela, it's just I find a lot of, like, my interest relies more on justice, you know, because I have lived in a very unjust system for too long.
Mm. Mm.
So it's just, if I can do anything for to apply a little bit of justice, spatially or socially, just to bring that possibility in,
Mhm.
that for me makes everything. It's just like,
Mm.
if this community has water and this one doesn't have water, we need to do something to provide water to this other one.
Mm.
So for me, it's just that. And like hobbies, I dance salsa, I read a lot, I love listening to music. I listen to music all the time.
What are some genres or favorite artists that you have?
No, that's even a harder question, because
okay.
Like if you check my iPad, you will think that I have multiple personalities. I go from opera classic to heavy metal to
Wow.
something in any moment, any given moment. Yeah.
Interesting. Just wondering, what are your thoughts on the future of design, knowing that people are not looking at design like you are? They're mostly looking at ways to, I guess, make money or construct the most like beautiful thing for, not that beauty isn't part of design, but this beauty should be part of that equation.
Beauty is always part of design. The question is, what is beauty and to whom?
To whom?
Because what I consider beautiful is not the same as somebody considers beautiful in Africa or in Japan. Because the concept of beauty is something very subjective. So it's beautiful. The question is, beautiful for who? But yeah, future of design. So I mean, in the world we are, like thinking on the future of design is tough. But I'd say that I imagine a design world in which we're more inclusive. You know, it's just like it doesn't like it is not only one view which takes over the whole world. And I see a world in which we realize how important it is to be fair, to be useful, to be at the service of people, and understand that it is not enough for one to be good. It's just like we have to be okay as a community. Because, and I see this in Venezuela all the time, like you can be as rich as you want, but I guarantee you that when you see people eating from the garbage, your day is going to be wrecked. Doesn't matter how rich you are. There's happiness in seeing everyone being okay.
Yeah.
Also, that's what I hope for design. It's just understanding that your carbon emissions also mess with the whole world. So it's not like Canada reduce emissions or Russia reduced emissions. No. Like this is a collective effort, because sea level rise is not gonna happen just in Canada. It's gonna happen worldwide. So everyone needs to be included in these conversations. For example, poverty, famine, all of that. It's just like, how is it possible that one of the worst contributors to global warming is food waste, when there's places in the world where there's nothing to eat?
Yeah.
You know, like this conversation needs
distribution
seriously. You know, and you know, we have these millionaires going to space. It's just like, so what is the plan now? Like to wreck something outside of the world because you finished with this? It's just like, what's going on now? So I just like to imagine a world in which we are smart, in which we are people thinking on the real things that we need to be thinking on and acting. So this is not more about, you know, the last Google headquarters. It's just like, how do we make the things that really matter, you know? So
beautiful.
I don't know, that's my hope.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. And that concludes the end of our interview.